which works a little better in this class. Let's tell them your favorite ice cream to start off, and then after that, where you would get that ice cream in Hood River, where your favorite spot is to go. All right. Is there anybody that wants to share what their favorite ice cream is?
Like cookie dough or like cherry ice cream.
That's a solid one. Cookie dough? I don't know about cherry. That's like medicine to me.
Yeah.
Or you could say your partners if you want.
Okay, his is vanilla.
My favorite ice cream place is Dairy Queen because I worked there when I was in high school. It was my first job. So, and today we're gonna talk about the 9 common thinking errors that people experience. Does anybody have a guess what that is? One thing that I said in my other class was that a lot of times I like to say that I'm bad with memorizing names because it's an excuse, and it is kind of common. When I get nervous, I forget people's names, but that doesn't mean that I'm bad at memorizing names, right? Because I met you guys yesterday, right? And I already know probably 5 of your names in here. So to me, that means that I'm not terrible at it, but yet I'll still tell people. So we're gonna talk about thinking errors like that. So I'm gonna hand out these packets real quick. We're going to turn to that same Noble partner, and was there anybody that didn't have a Noble partner in that scenario? You didn't? You were in a group of 3 though? Alright, could you be in that same group of 3? And then we're gonna partner read this, so one person's gonna read this one person's gonna read this one. If you're in a group of 3, one person will read this one. If you're not in a group of 3, you'll just go back and forth, okay? When you're reading through this, pay attention to them and pay attention to yourself and think about how this could possibly apply to your life and where some of these might come up, right? After we read through these 9 thinking errors, we're gonna come back together and there's gonna be some examples up here. We're gonna run through those examples and we're gonna apply these 9 thinking errors to those examples. That make sense?
Do we actually write anything on the paper?
No, you're just gonna read through them right now. I printed these out so that we could read through them in our hands rather than look up here. It's gonna be easier. Alright, so let's turn to our elbow partners right now and read through these. Feel free to raise your hand if you guys have any questions or if it's not making sense, okay?
Mine's ready
Looks like we're just about done. Did anybody, just to raise a hand, you don't have to share, but did anybody, while you were reading through these, were you like, oh my gosh, that right there, that's so me. I do that all the time.
for all of them.
Yeah, I think this could apply to a lot of us, right? So I'm gonna read the statement, and then you're gonna raise your hand if you know which one of these that statement applies to, or which one of these applies to that statement. So the first one is, I should feel happy right now. Should statement, yeah. I know I will never be able to manage my anxiety. You know? A fortune teller. Yeah, fortune teller, that one works. What about, she doesn't like me, she doesn't want to be my friend. Yeah. What's the next one? Number 4, I'm such a loser. What was that?
Self-blaming.
Self-blaming, yeah. Good job. So let's remember to raise our hands, right? Oh, you guys are already jumping ahead. My parents' fight this morning was all my fault. Number 8, he didn't didn't invite me to his house, so he thinks I'm boring.
Mind reader.
Mind reader. And there's another one, right?
Yeah, okay.
Starts with a B.
B?
Blowing things up.
Yeah, right?
No, yeah.
He didn't invite me to his house. Maybe he couldn't invite him to his house, but automatically he just jumps to, he thinks I'm boring. What about number 9? I bet nobody. Yeah, cool. Well, good job. We're not done though. One thing that I learned in a psychology class in college was to name it and then reframe it. So what we did right here is that we just named it. We said, hey, this is where these apply. Now we gotta reframe it. So, who knows what plasticity is? Plasticity.
Means you can train it.
Yeah, you can train and mold. It's in your brain, plasticity is. It's a neurological. Oh,
It's
are you
like,
okay?
huh?
Are you okay?
Yeah. It's like having, like fixing your mind to be like a positive mindset or something.
Right. So it's a part of our brain that creates pathways to the way that we think after things outside or inside get turned into thoughts. So how we apply those thoughts to our actions. So what we just read through right here, maybe sometimes you think this way, or I think this way, or he thinks this way, or she thinks this way, but what we need to do is we need to change it to positive ways of thinking, right? Example that I read online was like a piece of clay. Like your brain is like a piece of clay, right? And if you push a quarter into a piece of clay, each time the mold is gonna look different. Even though that quarter mold is there, the outside factor is getting pushed into your brain, the rest of your brain, how it reacts to the quarter is gonna look different each time, right? Because clay doesn't look the same. So that's the same thing with our brains. Say, your friend doesn't invite you to your house, or their house. And how you could take that is how they said it right here, is he didn't invite me to his house, so he must think I'm boring. Or you could change that to he must be busy, or because I'm awesome, right? So, we'll read through a few of these statements, how they were and how they should have been, and then we'll reflect a little bit. So, does anybody want to volunteer to read one? Maybe.
Does it matter which one?
It doesn't. You could pick, but you just got to read 6 and 6. So 7 and 7. Okay.
I'm fat, so I suck at soccer. I feel fat sometimes, but I can still be good at soccer and enjoy playing.
Yeah. Good. So instead of this one, I'm fat, so I suck at soccer. We should have said this, right? Good job.
Oh, me? Okay.
Read over it. I know it sounds silly, but these are pretty important things in life that we should try to apply to ourselves, right? Reading these kind of is awkward and feels icky in our stomach, but then after you read this, you're like, wow, that's a way better way to think about it. And so even though these sentences might seem silly, we do think this way a lot, and we need to start thinking this way. I mean, maybe sometimes you do think this way though, and that's awesome. You should think that way, but just some personal reflection. All right, before we do this, fist to 5, how clear was that to you? You could be completely honest. Fist being, didn't make sense at all. 5 being, I get it, I'm gonna start applying this to my life. Right on. Digging the honesty. Alright. Next up is our optimistic closure before we get some free time to work on homework and such.